The two kinds of righteousness enable Lutherans fully and unreservedly to affirm two simultaneous and yet distinct, genuine dimensions of human existence without one compromising the other. This is so important because as human beings, we live in these two dimensions. We live in the world. So we have to, as an expression of love, move out into the world and contribute good, not only for the sake of one another, but for the sake of the world, the environment. That's a good thing. That's a godly thing. And then we also live in the reality that we are broken in such a way that we cannot earn righteousness, and we need to receive from God passively, right, with open hands, this gift that he places in our hands that we lay hold of, that allows us to move into a right standing with him. We exist in both of those dimensions. They should not fight one another. They should be held together, and they should also be understood to be distinct. That's one of the complexities of what we're dealing with here, that oftentimes gets very foggy and those lines get blurred and they lead people the wrong direction to trying to earn their way into heaven. And again, that is something that we have to vehemently guard against, because that old Adam in us is fighting to earn its way into heaven. And we have to continue to die to that thing so that we can always rest in what God is doing for us and not add a burden to what it means to be a Christian. Although the term righteousness is no longer a part of our everyday vocabulary, it is a basic and in some ways an indispensable concept if we hope to grasp the meaning of the Bible. In other words, we need to always wrestle with what is righteousness so we can properly understand our holy book. Its disuse is unfortunate, since the meaning of righteousness is not terribly difficult or complex. Simply put, to be righteous is to be the human person God envisioned when he created us. It has to do with meeting God's design specifications for being a human creature and fulfilling the purpose for which God created us. Integral to his design, God created us as relational beings who live in his presence, coram Deo. So coram Deo, a Latin phrase that means before God, and at the same time in community with one another, coram mundo, which means before man. Who I am is determined in large part by how I live with God and my fellow human creatures. As creatures, we thus have an innate need to know whether or not our lives are fulfilling God's purpose. We need to be justified or vindicated. We need to know that we are measuring up. This human need expresses itself in the various life questions we ask ourselves. Why am I here? What is the purpose of my life? How and where do I fit in? Such questions give voice to the fundamental human need to connect with God and his plan for our lives. By virtue of our created nature, we need to hear God's yes, his original word of blessing. Very good. Genesis 1:31. Woo, I love that. As humans, we need that. You always hear people talk about, I want to know my purpose. Why am I here? You ask yourself, why is that such an important question for us? Because God wrote it on the DNA of what it means to be a human. We must hear God's yes. We're longing to hear God's very good. From Genesis 1:31, we need that connection to our God. That's just this innate thing that we all have within us, and you see it expressed among all people from all worldviews and walks of life. It's just a fact. After the fall into sin, this basic element of our created humanity becomes distorted in terms of how and where we find the answers. In some instances, people seek God's affirmation, but only on their own terms. In other instances, people substitute the affirmation of other human beings for that of God himself. So we're all looking for that answer. And because of the fall, We all go different places looking for it, the wrong places looking for that answer.